You were created, you were designed by God from the foundation of the earth for significance. But we live in a broken world. And so people have that desire and they pursue significance through counterfeits and deceptions that ultimately disappoint. It's the understanding that significance flows increasingly out of your understanding, our understanding of identity. And identity is not who we see ourselves as. Identity is not based on our situation, our circumstances, our mistakes, our failures, but rather God looks past all of that through the completed work of Jesus, and he calls your identity based on who he sees you are going to be. And again, he planned all of this from the foundation of the earth. And understanding out of identity, interwoven with it is purpose. From the beginning, God created man primarily for relationship, but out of relationship, he delegated all that he created to Adam, that he wanted him to have purpose. And as we come into a greater clarity of the unique identity that God has called each one to, that he has also given in that purpose. And simply put, while it looks different for everyone, purpose is your role, your authority and responsibility to bring the reality of the kingdom into situations and circumstances. But to understand identity, in 3 points on understanding how God sees us, how he's already empowered us, and how he magnifies it, let's look at Gideon. Now, when the story begins, Gideon is hiding, threshing wheat at night because he is intimidated by the Midianites who were oppressing God's people. And the angel Lord appears to him, and he immediately calls him mighty man of valor. Now, that's because that's how God saw him. But in reality, not only is he intimidated, but his first response is, who am I? I'm nobody. I'm from this tiny tribe. And as the story goes on, so often he needs that reassurance from God. He frequently comes back asking God for a fleece, a sign that, okay, God, you are truly with me. Because that goes on to the angel Lord says, you are to free my people. You're going to be my man, so to speak, and I will be with you as you break this oppression. And again, as I said, what does Gideon do? His response is he needs some continual reassurance. Now, on a side note, the first thing that God has him do is go tear down this altar to Baal, this false god, which has consequences, which stirs up the final conflict, where literally Gideon makes his mark against the Midianites, the catalyst that brings it all to a head. But that's kind of really a second story. But think about the fact that Gideon starts as the guy hiding, needing constant reassurance, to a man who has the boldness to go into battle with only 300 men against the entire Midianite army. God gives him victory. He becomes this great judge of Israel. But what are the 3 points for us? Well, first off is understanding identity. As I said, identity is not how we perceive ourselves. And we have to understand, we have to distract or disconnect from what the world would tell us. The God of this world would remind us of our failures, our shortcomings, our weaknesses, and so on. Hurts of the past. He would want to keep us inside that box so that we never live out the fullness of all that God has for us. And God says so many things to each one of us individually about identity, from his profound love to purpose, empowerment, authority, and so on. But I want to just throw one out there. And it's something you see repeated throughout the Bible. That when the angel called him a mighty man, that word literally is the same word about valor. It's David's mighty men. Esther, the queen, that literally it was that inner strength, that mightiness, that greatness that God had already put in there, how he saw them so that he could use them for his people's benefit. So first we have to understand it. We have to make that disconnect, shifting our understanding and our thinking that our identity is not based on anything to do with our past, anything to do with disappointments, hurts, etc., but rather fully embracing, as God continually reveals it to us, the identity of how He sees us. And out of that identity, understanding He has already placed inside of each one of us what is necessary, the gifting, whatever is necessary to accomplish all that He's called us to do. That when the angel says to Gideon, "You're going to be my man," he says, "Go in the strength you have." Now, again, it didn't look like it. He's intimidated, he's needing reassurance. But the angel is saying, you already have the strength inside of you. God has already placed inside of you everything necessary for you to make your impact, make your mark, to fulfill your purpose, and in doing, find your fulfillment. It's already there. However, it only grows and it empowered in that continual relationship with God. That when we abide in the vine, we bear that fruit. That gifting, that talent, that strength, whatever it is that's inside that is necessary for what God has called each one to in each situation, it grows and is magnified in Him. So often and so easily we fall into the mistake of recognizing that unique talent, ability, strength, whatever it is, and we so often rely on it rather than on Him. And so often that leads to a developing crisis where we're finally pushed to the breaking point to turn back to Him. Rather, whatever the situation, whatever the circumstances, turning to Him first so that He can not place something new in you, but reveal and highlight and magnify what He's already placed inside of you. And all of that is so that we grow in maturity, relationship with Him. He is glorified, that it brings blessing and benefit to people, the world around us that God so desperately loves. But it's understanding, moving past any mental blocks to the realization God has called you to significance. But not significance in what you can accomplish in your strength, but the significance that comes from growing and living that identity, not based on my failures, not based on our circumstances, but living that future identity of who God already sees you as, who He already calls you as. Living that out, knowing that God's purpose is that He can work in and through you to bring the reality, to demonstrate His reality to a hurt and broken world.